Welcome back, Phosphor Dot fans. Venturing further out into the world of consoles that weren't produced by Atari, weren't in television, and perhaps weren't on the tip of everyone's tongues, I'm going to play something from the Bally Professional Arcade, also known later as the Astrocade. The Bally system had some very good games on it, and some of them were just about arcade perfect because they shared a lot in common with some of Bally Midway's coin-op games. We'll get into that later because this is not one of them. This is Muncher, and I just guess what this is, what this game is trying to be. Just go on, guess. Now, it's kind of odd that Bally, in its, since Bally owned Midway, and Midway had the rights to produce Pac-Man arcade games in and for the US market, you would think that Bally would have had the foresight to lock down the home video game rights to the same game, but they didn't. And so, while Atari was gearing up to produce a home version of Pac-Man, because they had an existing deal in place with Namco that actually gave them the right of first refusal on Namco's games, on home console ports of Namco's games, which is how you wound up with Atari producing its own cartridge versions of Pac-Man, Dig Dug, Pole Position, and so on. So, because Atari had that kind of sweetheart deal locked in that was something that was on paper before Pac-Man ever came out, and really had nothing to do with Pac-Man, it just happened to pay off once Pac-Man became a hit. So Bally, like everyone else, had to kind of roll their own where Pac-Man was concerned. They had to make their own version of the game, and they had to, carefully avoid calling it Pac-Man. Although I do remember that especially in the magazines of the time, like Electronic Games, Bally was particularly bad about announcing upcoming titles that were meant to, shall we say, evoke very specific arcade games. Bally was particularly bad about just using the title of the game that their game was based on. Is that a strawberry or a heart? Pac-Man eating hearts now? That's disturbing. Of course, the sad thing is, whoever wound up with the with the actual rights to Pac-Man such that they could develop a home version and market it as Pac-Man, instead of saying, well, it's like Pac-Man, which even that famously got Magnavox in trouble whenever Magnavox was being sued over the Odyssey 2 game. Or not Magnavox, but North American Philips was being sued over the Odyssey 2 game, KC Munchkin, which was substantially similar to Pac-Man, as the courts determined. Kind of makes you wonder what would have happened, how history might have unfolded differently had Bally been able to license the game from Namco, announced to the public, we are the console you have to buy if you want to play Pac-Man. Would that have changed Atari's fortunes significantly? Now, as it happens, and I'm sure you can notice, there are some significant differences in the maze in Muncher. Oh, it looks like a lemon. I'm not going to be able to retrieve that yellow fruit. Perhaps it's a mango. Perhaps I died. Of course, there's every chance that it would not significantly affect Atari's fortunes to begin with, though I think if we're going to delve into alternate timeline stuff here, I think where it really might have made a difference would have been in the brute force legal handling that Atari applied to its Pac-Man license. Because Muncher is just one of many, many games that were Pac-Man and everything but the name that Atari sued off the market. Yeah, I'm not going to bother with you guys. Just going to eat some dots and die in the attempt to go about my business. Obviously a very superior version of Pac-Man compared to what Atari put out on the 2600. So it really does kind of invite some theorizing as to what might have turned out differently had Bally had the foresight via Midway to try to specifically snag the home console rights to Pac-Man. It might be a very different world from what unfolded with Atari dominating the scene. Maybe, or maybe not. Either way, Muncher is a very good approximation of Pac-Man, and one of many really cool titles that we'll be exploring on the Astrocade, or the Bally Professional Arcade, as it was originally known, in future Phosphor Dot Fossils.